The first thing I did after reincarnating was to grab the poison and rush to the dumpling shop in the west of the city. That young dumpling seller was the real crown prince, exiled among the common folk. Soon after, he would return to the palace with his childhood sweetheart. First, kill the fake crown prince. Then, torment the crown princess. On the day the crown princess died, the snow falling from the sky turned red upon hitting the ground. I was that ill-fated crown princess. Unexpectedly, I bumped into the fake crown prince at the dumpling shop entrance. Sword in hand, I raised an eyebrow. "What's up? Joining us." Main text. On the crown prince's wedding day, the eastern palace was heavily guarded. Xiao Jinglan and I were about to lift our cups of wedding wine. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed outside. The commander of the Imperial Guards kicked open the door, clutching a scroll of Imperial yellow. After he finished reading the edict, he waved his hand, signaling the guards behind him to seize Xiao Jinglan. The folding fan in my hand clattered to the floor. I looked up to meet Xiao Jinglan's equally stunned eyes. Xiao Jinglan was not the true crown prince. Today, the true crown prince had been found. I rushed to the palace that very night to seek an audience with the emperor. Seated upon his high throne, the emperor looked weary. He sighed and turned his gaze upon me, his eyes deep and somber. "Rest assured, Yuan Shi, regardless of who the crown prince may be, you shall always be the crown princess." I shook my head anxiously. "Your servant does not seek the position of crown princess." But, enough. The emperor's expression darkened. "Cutting me off. Escort the crown princess out of the palace." Stumbling out the palace gates, a ghostly figure by the corridor pillars called out to me, "You are Jiang Yuanxi, my crown princess." His features bore a striking resemblance to the emperor's, though his slightly upturned eyes gave him a more mercenary air. He appraised me from head to toe, then remarked, "Nothing special." My mind was preoccupied with Xiao Jinglan's safety, so I paid little heed to his words. I bowed and hurriedly withdrew. Unexpectedly, days later, the crown prince sought me out himself. A cryptic smile played at the corners of his mouth as he led me into the imperial prison. Xiao Jinglan was pinned rigidly to the gallows, his face deathly pale. Chains thicker than a man's wrist pierced his scapulae. Drops of blood fell from the execution frame, pooling on the floor in a crimson stain. Gazing at Xiao Jinglan, now barely recognizable as human, a sharp pain gripped my chest. I collapsed to the ground. "Does the crown prince's consort enjoy this grand gift I've prepared for you? Had mother not quarreled with father and swapped me for a foundling? Every luxury this low-born scum enjoyed these past 20 years should have been mine." The crown prince yanked me by the scruff to stand before Xiao Jinglan. He personally seized a red-hot branding iron and pressed it viciously into Xiao Jinglan's wound. A sizzling sound filled the air, mingled with the acrid smell of burning flesh. "No, please, stop." I violently shook off his grip and lunged toward Xiao Jinglan, desperate to shield him. But the crown prince yanked me back by my hair, dragging me out of the cell. His cold voice whispered against my ear, "I am the crown prince. If I want him dead, he dies." A eunuch led a woman dressed in pale yellow robes to wait outside. I knew her, the crown prince's childhood sweetheart. When he lived among commoners, her family had sheltered him. The emperor disdained her low birth, delaying permission for her to marry into the eastern palace. The woman threw herself into the crown prince's arms, calling him Brother Rue. His Majesty had already bestowed the name Shaolin upon the crown prince. Throughout the entire palace, she alone still called him by his old name. The crown prince lowered his head to kiss her forehead, his icy gaze settling on me, like a venomous snake poised to strike at any moment. Days later, Xiao Jinglan was executed by dismemberment. Hearing this news, darkness flooded my vision, and I collapsed from my chair. Xiao Jinglan, the darkness, thick with the scent of blood, felt like vines growing wildly, suffocating me. Miss, wake up." A pair of slightly cold hands touched my face. I grabbed those hands and sat up abruptly. Taking in the familiar surroundings of the room, the maid Yinxiang murmured softly, "Young mistress, another nightmare. 5 days ago, I was reborn. Reborn 1 month before my marriage to Xiao Jinglan. At this time, the true crown prince had not yet been found. It took me a while to confirm I had truly been reborn. The events of my past life returned like a nightmare every night. I remember that on the day I died, heavy snow must have fallen over the capital. The cold was bitter. Yet I could no longer feel it. I pierced my throat with the hairpin Xiao Jinglan had given me. I collapsed beneath the plum tree in the eastern palace. That white plum tree perhaps for the first time shed petals stained crimson. Seeing my dazed expression, Yunxiang called my name again. Only then did I snap back to reality. I pulled several silver notes from the dressing table and handed them to her. "Go buy me some poison, the most potent kind. The kind that strikes instantly. Do this quietly. Remember, no one must find out." Yunxiang nodded and left with the silver. She never asked questions. She simply obeyed whatever I said. It was so in my past life. And so it is in this one. Yet it was Yunxiang who, in her desperate protection of me, had her tongue cut out by Zhao Yanshu and was thrown into the brothel, given as entertainment to those filthy beggars. I knelt before Shaolin and begged him for a very long time before he returned Yunxiang to me. But the Yunxiang he gave back was nothing but a handful of white bones. Only on my deathbed did Zhao Yanshu tell me the soup I drank every day was simmered with Yunxiang's flesh. At this thought, I clutched the table corner and vomited violently. Shaolin, Zhao Yanshu, Anne, the one who pushed me into the abyss while perched on high. Since I have been reborn, I will never let the events of my past life repeat themselves. Yunxiang returned quickly, the moment she pushed open the door. Sunlight flooded the room. I instinctively raised my arm to shield my eyes. Perhaps because I'd been blind for so long in my past life, I hadn't yet adjusted to the brightness of this one. Yunxiang placed the poison shed bought before me. "Miss, the shopkeeper said this poison is extremely potent. Just a single coin's worth is enough to kill someone instantly. Not even a divine immortal could save them." I stared at the substantial packet of poison. Lost in thought, Yunxiang remained as considerate as ever. Father returned from the Imperial Academy. He mentioned the Crown Prince had been ill for 3 consecutive days and hadn't appeared. I was warming my hands around a teacup and paused slightly. Did they say what illness it was? It seems he caught a cold. In my previous life, Xiao Jinglan hadn't fallen ill at this time. Could it be that because I've been reborn, the trajectory of this life differs from the last? I hurriedly set down my teacup and gave Yunxiang a meaningful glance. She immediately understood. "Miss, the books drying in the courtyard haven't been brought in yet." I slapped my forehead. "Look at my memory." Father wanted to say more, but when he turned back, I was already gone. I returned to my room, retrieved the packet of poison Yunxiang had bought, and carefully tucked it into my sleeve. The night is long and full of dreams. Unforeseen troubles are bound to arise. From this day forward, Shaolin and Zhao Yanshu must vanish completely from this world. Changing into plain clothes, I slipped out the back gate, taking a detour. I arrived at the steamed bun shop in the eastern part of the city. From afar, I saw the once reckless Crown Prince Shaolin from my past life now bent over, kneading dough. Batch after batch of buns emerged from the steamer, their steam filling the air. A deafening roar echoed in my ears. My limbs went cold, and I stumbled backward several steps without realizing it. Before my eyes flashed the image of him pinning me beneath him, forcing me to watch the execution, no matter how I cried or screamed. It was all in vain. Blood flowed through the cracks in the stone slabs, splattering everywhere, stinging my eyes painfully. Later, Shaolin forcibly married me because of the emperor's decree. The crown prince's consort can only be Jiang Yuanshi. On our wedding day, my wails of despair echoed throughout the entire eastern palace. I begged him, but he showed me no mercy. So naturally, I would show him none either. At this moment, Shaolin still didn't know he was actually the crown prince. He was Shinrue, the bun seller, alongside Zhao Yinshu. He introduced the varieties of buns to the old woman who always bought from them. After buying her buns, the vendor remarked as she left that the two made a perfect match. A heavenly union. Zhao Yinshu blushed coyly, turning her face away, though the corners of her eyes and brows betrayed an uncontrollable smile. Yes, they were a heavenly union. And me, I was the ungrateful stone standing between them. In my past life, Zhao Yinshu resented me for taking the crown princess position and deliberately ran outside the city. When Xiao Lin found her and brought her back, she claimed her eyes hurt and whined that she wanted me to suffer the same pain. So Xiao Lin gouged out my eyes to appease her. Afterward, he even told the emperor it was my own carelessness. How careless could I possibly be to lose both eyes? After I went blind, Zhao Yinshu found new ways to torment me. Pour burning charcoal into my hands and order me to catch it if I missed even one piece. Kill someone from my clan. I shook my head hard, trying to banish these memories of my past life from my mind. Seizing a moment when Xiao Lin and Zhao Yinshu weren't looking, I lifted my skirt and slipped toward the back door of the steamed bun shop. All I needed to do was poison their food. Then I could live out this life in peace. Unexpectedly, I stumbled upon a familiar figure. I looked at the man who should have been recuperating in the Eastern Palace. Then at the sword he held in his hand, I raised an eyebrow. What? You in? He instantly understood my meaning, his sword-wielding hand trembling imperceptibly. You reincarnated too? I nodded, tugging his sleeve as I pulled him inside. This time, we must strike first and kill those two. I brought a large bag of poison. It'll definitely kill them. Xiao Jinglan chuckled softly. I never knew Man could be so ruthless. Hearing him use that diminutive again felt like stepping into another lifetime. I glared back at him. Put your sword away before we talk. Xiao Jinglan sheathed his sword and watched me poison every dish. Finally, he took the remaining poison from my hands and used every last bit without waste. Once we were absolutely certain, Xiao Jinglan and I hurried away. On the way back, I counted the minutes on my fingers. They should be dead by now, right? Xiao Jinglan suddenly stopped. Should we go back and check? So the two of us crept back to the dumpling shop, only to find a large crowd gathered inside and outside the entrance. Officials were present, carrying out two bodies covered in white cloth. They were fine just moments ago. How could they be gone so suddenly? So young. What a pity. Not a pity. Not a single bit. Xiao Jinglan and I exchanged glances, both of us struggling to suppress the corners of our mouths. Xiao Lin and Zhao Yinshu were dead. Even father could tell my mood had lifted considerably. He said Xiao Jinglan had petitioned His Majesty for permission, and our wedding would take place in 5 days. Truthfully, the Ministry of Rites had already delivered all the wedding paraphernalia last month. A day earlier or later made no difference. I went to the Eastern Palace to find Xiao Jinglan. He had just returned from archery practice at the range, clad in riding gear. His sword-like brows and starry eyes were framed by a headband still tied across his forehead. He casually unfastened his wrist guard and tossed it to a servant before lifting his gaze to meet mine. His icy expression melted instantly. How long have you been waiting? Man. Not long. Just arrived. I followed him into the chamber. Why did your highness change the wedding date? He dismissed all attendants with a wave. His arms swept out, drawing me into his embrace. Xiao Jinglan held me close, leaning down to whisper softly in my ear. Man. I don't want to wait any longer. 5 days later, the Eastern Palace was adorned with festive lanterns and decorations. Radiating joy, Xiao Jinglan, clad in a deep crimson wedding robe, looked even more striking. His features like a painted portrait. The dragon and phoenix wedding candles burned quietly before the bed. Xiao Jinglan held me close as we sank into the embroidered mandarin duck quilt. A wave of restlessness washed over my face. I heard a muffled chuckle, followed by a shower of soft, rapid kisses. The canopy hung low, the candle wick crackling softly. Long fingers patiently undid the buttons of my robe. Suddenly, urgent knocking sounded at the door. Your Highness. His Majesty summons you and the Crown Princess to the palace. A sense of impending doom washed over me. In the imperial study, Shaolin, who should have been a corpse, stood beside the emperor. His gaze was sinister as he stared at Xiao Jinglan and me. Shaolin wasn't dead. Where exactly had things gone wrong? I furrowed my brow. My eyes filled with confusion as I looked at Xiao Jinglan. He squeezed my palm gently and whispered, "Let's see first." Outside the palace, the night stretched endlessly. Inside, the hall was brightly lit. A breeze, its origin unknown, swept past the candlesticks on the imperial desk. The flickering candlelight danced like a restless shadow, casting an eerie glow upon the emperor's profile. From afar, I saw the emperor holding a jade token, his fingertips tracing its intricate patterns. That jade plaque's design was all too familiar to me. In my past life, Shaolin had been discovered by the emperor's confidant after accidentally revealing this very jade pendant. The emperor sent men to investigate, only to learn that the crown prince he had raised for years was not his biological son. The true crown prince huddled in that tiny bun shop, living in constant fear. Perhaps it was a sense of debt that later led the emperor to indulge Shaolin excessively. So excessively that he permitted Shaolin to slaughter meritorious officials at will. My father, brothers, and family all were killed by him. Brother Jinglan. Did you see the jade token in His Majesty's hand? Later. You must insist it's yours. That you lost it recently. I have a way to make the emperor believe you. I deliberately lowered my voice to avoid being overheard. In the past, whenever I needed Xiao Jinglan's help, I would always call him Jinglan brother. Xiao Jinglan replied in a whisper only the two of us could hear. All right. I'll do whatever you say. As Xiao Jinglan and I approached, the emperor lifted his gaze to glance at us. It was but a fleeting look, yet I felt it keenly, the weight of the Son of Heaven's authority. Perhaps this lifetime's course had been utterly disrupted by Xiao Jinglan and my rebirth. Perhaps the emperor remained unaware of the truths buried beneath the palace walls. He did not see Xiao Jinglan immediately, as he had in the past. The hall fell into utter silence. The emperor tucked away the jade token in his hand and beckoned Shaolin forward. By candlelight, I finally saw his face clearly. A terrifying scar now marred his brow. Compared to the Shaolin of my past life, he resembled a demon crawling out of hell. He absolutely, positively must not succeed in becoming crown prince. The emperor tapped the tabletop lightly and declared in a deep voice, "The secret guards brought this man back from the mass grave. Not only does he possess the late empress belongings, but he bears such a striking resemblance to me. Crown prince, do you find that strange?" Xiao Jinglan and I exchanged a glance, understanding immediately. The poison administered that day must have malfunctioned somehow, allowing him to escape death. That Zhao Yanshu must still be alive too. Before Xiao Jinglan could speak, the emperor continued. I recall indeed giving the empress consort such a jade token. Why have I never seen the crown prince wearing it these years? His gaze remained fixed on Xiao Jinglan, scrutinizing him. It seemed he couldn't definitively determine whether Xiao Jinglan or Shaolin was the true crown prince. Xiao Jinglan's expression remained composed. This jade token was my mother's keepsake. I've always been reluctant to wear it. When presenting the betrothal gifts to the crown princess recently, I took it out to examine it, but it was accidentally lost. I have no idea where this person obtained my mother's jade token. Upon hearing this, Shaolin grew frantic. He loudly protested from the side. You're lying. The peasant family who adopted me said this jade token was placed in my swaddling clothes. It was left to me by my mother. The emperor's expression darkened abruptly as he coldly declared, I never knew an object could belong to two masters. Since this jade token was both an item this man carried from childhood and the crown prince's lost possession, does the crown prince have evidence proving this token was lost by you? I detected a peculiar undertone in the emperor's words. At this moment, he seemed to believe more strongly that Shaolin was his true son. After all, That face bore a 70% resemblance to his own. I stepped forward and bowed gracefully to the emperor. Your Majesty. The crown prince has already given this jade token to this humble servant. It was I who carelessly lost it. And the crown prince was merely protecting me. His Highness has demonstrated its intricate mechanisms to me. Your Majesty, why not entrust this jade token to me? I shall prove its workings. Before all these witnesses. How could I possibly deceive you? I carry this jade token daily. How could I be unaware of any hidden mechanisms? Shaolin scoffed. The emperor scrutinized him with a stern expression. Then glanced at me before tossing the token to the eunuch attendant. Yuan Shi. Regardless of who becomes crown prince, you are the crown princess consort I have chosen. I knelt with a thud. Thank you for your Majesty's favor. I am humbled. I entered the Eastern Palace not for the title of crown princess, but solely for Xiao Jinglan. In my previous life, it was precisely because the emperor insisted on making me crown princess that displeased Shaolin and displeased Xiao Yanxuo. That led to my tragic downfall. He sat upon his lofty throne, unaware that sometimes an emperor's favor could be a deadly blade. I took the jade token from the eunuch's hand and traced its edges for a long time, finding the hidden mechanism within. I pressed it gently. The token split into two halves, with two small characters carved where they once joined. Yuan. Those were the childhood name given to the crown prince by the late empress. I returned the jade token to the emperor. The sovereign seated upon the dragon throne stared blankly at the split jade in his hands. His once straight spine suddenly slumped, as if his very soul had been torn from him. In that dazed moment, I felt the figure alone upon the high dais had aged several years. After a long silence, the emperor sighed. The mechanism within this jade token. It was I who taught Qinghe. His gaze then fell upon Shaolin, who stood beside him, his face frozen in shock. The emperor's voice carried a hint of anger. Since you carry this thing with you every day, why were you unaware of its hidden secrets? Shaolin's face drained of color, his words stumbling out in incoherent stutters. I discreetly winked at Xiao Jinglan. No matter how hard Shaolin racked his brain, he couldn't fathom how I'd discovered the jade plaque's hidden secret. Had it not been for the previous life, when he had me by the throat, intent on gouging out my eyes himself, I gasped for breath in agony, screaming at him to stop. In my struggle, I wrenched the jade token from his waist. It fell to the ground, shattering into two pieces. Only then did I realize its hidden secrets. Recalling all the sins Shaolin committed in my past life, my gaze toward him deepened with disgust. Since the poison failed to kill him, and fate's whirlpool has swept us together once more, Shaolin, this lifetime, I absolutely will not let you off easily. I had thought it was clear who the true crown prince was between Xiao Jinglan and Shaolin. The emperor, enraged, would surely impose the ultimate punishment on Shaolin. Yet, unexpectedly, he made no mention whatsoever of how Shaolin should be dealt with. In his youth, the emperor had not been favored. Cunning and scheming, he ultimately emerged victorious among the imperial princes. The most outrageous act he had ever committed in his life was to steal the fiancée of the great General Helin. He even made her his empress. The empress died in childbirth while bearing the crown prince. The emperor never remarried, leaving the imperial harem vacant. When he learned Xiao Jinglan was not his biological son, he realized the late empress had harbored hatred for him until her dying breath. Even their child had been used as a tool for vengeance. He vented all his resentment upon Xiao Jinglan, who shared no blood ties with him. The imperial edict sentencing Xiao Jinglan to dismemberment was written by his own hand. Yet now he shows such leniency toward Shaolin, merely confining him temporarily to an abandoned side hall. Doubts inevitably stir within me. All may withdraw. I am weary. The chief eunuch extinguished the candles on the imperial desk and assisted the emperor to his feet. As I stepped over the threshold of the imperial study, I turned back to glance behind me. As if compelled by some unseen force, all I saw was a frail, aged figure, dragging heavy footsteps. He vanished into the depths of the curtain, returning to the eastern palace. Xiao Jinglan seemed to have lost his mind. He pinned me against the door and kissed me for a long time. From tentative touches at first, to deep, lingering kisses. Only when moonlight streamed through the window did he release me, his breath light against my forehead. Man, tell me after I died in our last life, did you suffer terribly? Xiao Jinglan, ever the shrewd strategist, had long pieced together the truth from my unusual behavior. Wrapping my arms around his lean waist, I murmured, yes, I suffered terribly. That's why I'm reclaiming it all this lifetime. His warm fingertips traced my cheek. Xiao Jinglan's voice was hoarse. I'm sorry. I failed to protect you. Then you must live well to make it up to me slowly. Another round of tender caresses ensued. Xiao Jinglan ordered the meal served, then suddenly asked, that poison, where did you buy it? Starving. I hurried to eat. Pointing to Yunxiang waiting nearby, Yunxiang answered with perfect nonchalance, the revival hall in the East Market. Why? No wonder. Xiao Jinglan sighed, explaining to me. That's a shady shop. Their rat poison is made of starch. My hand paused midair above the soup bowl. I found myself both amused and exasperated. So that was why Shaolin had narrowly escaped death. Truly, fate plays cruel tricks. Half a month passed. Yet the emperor showed no sign of punishing Shaolin. Instead, the astronomical observatory grew bustling. The chief astrologer presented a thick scroll of calculations during court, reporting celestial anomalies. These portents bode ill for the nation, requiring one bearing auspicious omens to avert them. As for this auspicious individual, after thorough investigation, the search led to Shaolin. The emperor was greatly pleased and bestowed upon Shaolin a nominal title. He granted him special permission to remain within the palace grounds to facilitate the astronomical observatory's work. When I heard the news, I was in the courtyard feeding the fish. A handful of fish food scattered across the water created ripples. Watching the fish scramble for it, I couldn't muster any interest. Xiao Jinglan wrapped his arms around me from behind. Who's made my little wildcat frown again? I tossed the fish food to Yunxiang and pulled Xiao Jinglan to sit in the pavilion nearby. Who doesn't know the astronomical observatory has always been the emperor's man? His Majesty still suspects you. Seeing my frustration, Xiao Jinglan chuckled helplessly. Shaolin does bear an uncanny resemblance to father. He's always been suspicious. I frowned. By keeping him close, the emperor seems to be protecting him instead. Xiao Jinglan gazed at the lake. The fish had scattered after finishing their food, and the ripples on the water's surface gradually faded. How about grilled fish for dinner tonight? After earning a glare from me, Xiao Jinglan simply pulled me into his embrace. We have all the time in the world, since both Man and I have been reborn, knowing secrets unknown to others. We must make good use of it. Shaolin was raised among commoners since childhood, nothing but an ignorant, incompetent fool. His only support and reliance is the emperor. What if His Majesty no longer trusts him? The secret guards I dispatched days ago have just returned with a confidential message. The old retainers who served the late empress vanished without a trace after leaving the palace all those years ago. Now, no one can verify Shaolin's true identity. Because of this so-called auspicious sign, Shaolin thrived in the palace, basking in unparalleled favor. His devotion to Zhao Yanxua was genuine. Somehow, he persuaded the emperor to bring Zhao Yanxua into the palace as well. That day, when I encountered Zhao Yanxua in the palace, I nearly failed to recognize her. The peasant girl who once sold buns and coarse cloth now wore brocade robes, her hair adorned with the most fashionable peacock feather hairpin in the capital. Her expression was haughtily arrogant, followed by several timid palace maids who kept their heads bowed, dared not meet her gaze. One might think a new mistress had arrived in the palace. She flicked her handkerchief as she strode toward me. I glanced at her, waiting for her to curtsy. After all, Xiao Jinglan was still the crown prince, and I was his legally wedded crown princess. betrothed by the emperor himself. But Zhao Yanshua stopped before me, tilted her chin, and rolled her eyes at me. Some people find a stone and think it's a treasure, she declared loudly. I smiled, feigning unfamiliarity, and asked with feigned confusion, "And who might you be?" A palace maid immediately knelt before me, her voice trembling as she replied, "Greetings, Crown Princess. Miss Zhao is the cousin of Minister Shenrue. She has come to the palace to visit the minister." Incidentally, Shaolin hadn't yet received an imperial name at this point and was still called Shenrue. Oh, I arched an eyebrow, sizing up Zhao Yanshua with a tone laced with sarcasm. With such an arrogant demeanor, I was just wondering when the palace gained another consort I hadn't met. Zhao Yanshua lost her composure immediately. "Pa, what crown princess? They'll see how long you can keep gloating. No secret stays hidden forever within the palace walls." The emperor brought back a man from the common folk who bore a 70% resemblance to him. It was highly likely he was the true crown prince. Even my father and brother knew of this matter. Zhao Yanshua was convinced Shaolin was the real crown prince. Shed latched onto Shaolin like he was a mighty tree, clearly intent on trampling me underfoot. Not only did she refuse to pay me her respects, she stared at me with smug satisfaction. Her eyes held an unmistakable glint of provocation. Yunxiang tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Miss, has this woman lost her mind?" I laughed aloud. "Looks like she has. Time to bring her back to her senses." As the words fell, my gaze hardened. Miss Zhao has insulted this palace. Slap her face until she remembers her place. Zhao Yanshua screamed, "You dare! Brother Rui is the true crown prince. The one you married is just an imposter. I'll be the crown princess someday. Anyone who touches me, I'll have Brother Rui flay you alive." In my past life, she'd been just as arrogant and ignorant. Back then, Shaolin was already crown prince, shielding her in every conceivable way. But now, whether Shaolin remains crown prince is still up for debate. For her to dare rant like this utterly foolish. Like a pig, the palace maids trailing Zhao Yanshua immediately rushed forward to restrain her. The sharp crack of slaps echoed through the empty palace corridor. I had Yunxiang fetch a low stool, brought tea, and sat there watching Zhao Yanshua get beaten. In this scene, Yunxiang and I looked every bit like the vicious mistress and servant tormenting Zhao Yanshua. Little did she know that in her past life, when she laid hands on Yunxiang and me, she was far more brutal than this. Soon, Zhao Yanshua's cheeks swelled high, and blood trickled from the corners of her mouth. Her once beautiful face was now a pitiful sight. Shaolin received word and hurried over. The emperor and Xiao Jinglan followed behind him. Xiao Jinglan wore an imperial robe, his hair tightly bound in a top knot clearly fresh from court. Zhao Yanshua saw Shaolin as if he were her savior. She crawled weeping to his feet. "Brother Rui, save me. Save Schwer." Tears glistened in her eyes as she lifted her bruised face to him. "Schwer doesn't know what she did to offend the crown princess. Why must she treat me like this? Schwer hurts so much." I narrowed my eyes, a smile curling my lips. That wasn't what Shad said earlier. Pain. What I endured before. What Yunxiang endured that hurt 1,000. 10,000 times more. Miss Zhao now knows I am the crown princess. I bowed to the emperor. Rising, I gave Xiao Jinglan a reassuring glance without a flicker of emotion. Then I pushed Yunxiang aside and knelt heavily before the emperor. "Your Majesty, Miss Zhao claims that Shindarin is the true crown prince, and she is the future crown princess. She said this servant is nothing." As I spoke, I secretly pinched my thigh, lowering my head with tears welling in my eyes. I appeared even more pitiable than the beaten Zhao Yanshu. "Your servant could not bear it. She said it didn't matter about me. But such words clearly cast doubt upon your Majesty. Your Majesty, wise and mighty, makes your own decision show could outsiders presume to interfere. That is why your servant disciplined her." Zhao Yanshu was stunned by my words. Her eyes widened like copper bells. "What nonsense are you spouting? Insolence. A piercing gaze swept between me and Zhao Yanshu. Finally settling on her, the emperor flung his sleeves wide and thundered. This is the imperial palace, not some place for anyone to run amok. Shinrue, keep your people in check. Should this happen again, I shall punish you severely. Yuan Shi is the crown princess I personally selected. I wish to hear no one question my decision. Shaolin was not yet the crown prince. Zhao Yanshu's behavior was tantamount to roasting him over a fire. He dared not utter a word in defense, dragging Zhao Yanshu away. Zhao Yanshu resisted, still wailing and fussing. Fed up with her clamor, Shaolin knocked her unconscious and hoisted her over his shoulder. As he departed, he shot me a meaningful glance. On the way back to the Eastern Palace, Xiao Jinglan kept staring at me. I recalled how ID suddenly knelt before the emperor earlier, instinctively reached out to help me up. Realizing his mistake, had silently withdrawn his hand. The scene was truly amusing. I touched my own face and asked him with a smile, "Is there something on my face?" Xiao Jinglan shook his head. "No, it's just that today's man seems especially charming. I like it very much." My face flushed, and I scolded him for being improper. But once we returned, he pulled me into something even more improper. We didn't even bother with dinner. During the heavy rains, the Wei River burst its banks. Xiao Jinglan was busy with the Ministry of Works, devising flood control plans. For many days, he was nowhere to be seen. I learned to manage the household, often poring over the ledgers until late at night. One such night, exhausted from reading, I fell asleep with my head on the desk. In my dream, Shaolin was crowned crown prince once more. Zhao Yanshua stood beside him, laughing haughtily. "Fake is fake. How dare you pretend to be royal blood?" I awoke to find my palms drenched in cold sweat. As long as Shaolin and Zhao Yanshua live, they will always be a curse to Xiao Jinglan and me. On the day of the autumn equinox, I had Yunxian assist me as I personally cooked several dishes. Crystal 8 treasure duck, brocade spring bamboo shoots, crab roe shrimp cups, pine nut lily bulb pastries. I warmed a pot of pomegranate wine. Xiao Jinglan hurried in, setting aside his outer robe. No sooner had he sat down at the table than he asked in surprise, "Did you personally prepare all these dishes today?" I nodded, propping my chin up and winking at him. "Hurry up and taste them. How do they turn out?" Xiao Jinglan picked up his chopsticks and sampled a few bites. His eyes flickered slightly. As if recalling something, he set his chopsticks down and scrutinized the plate of pine nut and lily bulb pastries. "What is it? Is there something wrong with this pastry?" I asked suspiciously. Xiao Jinglan smiled and explained to me, "Pine nut and lily pastries are all the rage in the capital. Yet the imperial kitchen never prepares this dessert." I too was curious about it as a child. Later, I learned it was because the Empress Dowager is allergic to pine nuts. Whenever she ate these pastries, she would break out in a rash all over her body. So, the emperor ordered the imperial kitchen to ban this dessert. I thought to myself, so the emperor was quite devoted after all. Xiao Jinglan picked up a pine nut and lily pastry and offered it to my lips. Man. Let's give Shaolin a helping hand." I looked at the pastry and immediately understood. I smiled sweetly and said, "All right." According to ancestral tradition, the Qinqiu festival fell 10 days after the start of autumn. On this day, the emperor hosts a banquet for his ministers and bestows honors upon the officials. At the palace feast, Shaolin was dressed to turn heads. Apart from the emperor, he was the most flamboyant figure present. It seemed as though the crown prince's position was already within his grasp. Several conservative ministers cast a glance his way before shaking their heads and sighing. The maid standing beside Shaolin was none other than Zhao Yanshu. In the past, Zhao Yanshu's temperament would never have allowed her to disguise herself as a maid. Who knew what tricks Shaolin had used to coax her into this, making her so willingly comply? In previous years, I had attended the Qinqiu banquet with my father and brothers. The dishes were mostly refined and simple. This year, however, they were far more elaborate. As the banquet commenced, the emperor frowned at the plate of white pastries on the table. He raised his hand as if to inquire who had taken the liberty of adding this dish. His gaze glancing toward Xiao Jinglan and Xiao Lin, he silently dismissed the thought. After 3 rounds of wine, an unexpected incident occurred. Xiao Lin, who had eaten the pine nut and lily pastry, broke out in a red rash, looking quite terrifying. Quickly summoned the imperial physician. The emperor's expression changed drastically at the sight. Hastily calling for the physician to examine Xiao Lin. After diagnosis, the physician informed the emperor, Minister Shin appears to be allergic to the pine nut and lily pastry. Hearing this, the emperor's eyes darkened. After a moment of deep thought, his gaze toward Xiao Lin grew intensely earnest as he remarked coolly, I recall the late empress also had an allergy to pine nut and lily pastries. At these words, everyone present understood the emperor was seizing upon the incident. Recently, rumors that Xiao Lin was the true crown prince had been circulating with increasing intensity. The emperor turned to Xiao Jinglan and inquired, the crown prince seems uninterested in this particular pastry. Your servant has never tasted it and knows not its flavor. So naturally, I have no interest. Xiao Jinglan replied with neither humility nor arrogance. Oh, in that case, Ru'er bears some resemblance to the late empress. The emperor's gaze fixed firmly on Xiao Lin, observing the red rash covering his body. He spoke as if casually. Could it be that Ru'er is actually the flesh and blood of this old man in Qinghe? The words had barely left his mouth when a minister stepped forward. Your Majesty. Individuals possess different constitutions. To conclude that Minister Shin is of royal blood solely based on an allergic reaction is far too frivolous. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince serves the nation tirelessly managing floods, repairing river embankments, working day and night. His dedication is plain for all to see. I implore your Majesty to reconsider. Xiao Jinglan rose and said, If father deems me not the blood of father and mother, I have no words to say. I only ask that father allow me to complete the tasks at hand. To seek the welfare of the people, he now oversees the 6 ministries, holding a pivotal position. It's not that he's indispensable, but no one else could perform his duties better. After a prolonged standoff, the emperor glanced at Xiao Jinglan, standing tall and composed. With a wave of his hand, he gently turned the page. What I said earlier was merely jest. News of the palace banquet incident swiftly spread throughout the court and the realm. Recalling the emperor's ambiguous stance, it was difficult to discern what this deeply calculating sovereign truly intended. Xiao Jinglan, however, suddenly appeared more relaxed. He took me hunting. He took me to the archery range to teach me. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, took my hand, drew the bow, and shot. Every arrow hit the bullseye. He said, Wait a little longer. It won't be long now. Several days later, during morning court, the emperor suddenly remarked that Xiao Lin possessed some talent, and assigning him only a ceremonial post was a waste. He specifically named Xiao Jinglan and asked for his opinion. Xiao Jinglan finished organizing the Wei River breach case he was handling and handed it over to Xiao Lin. The Wei River had burst its banks, causing another flood. He had labored tirelessly on its management for a long time, and it was now in its final stages. Handing it over to Xiao Lin at this point was tantamount to handing over the credit for his work. Yet Xiao Jinglan acted with great magnanimity. After a night of intimacy, he held me as we sat in the courtyard gazing at the moon. The full moon hung high in the inky sky. Xiao Jinglan twirled a strand of my hair between his fingers, his voice still slightly hoarse. The Wei River case may seem to be nearing its conclusion, but significant hidden dangers remain. Those local officials aren't pushovers. Replacing the person in charge now would only give them more opportunities to exploit the situation. With Xiao Lin's abilities, he'd likely fare poorly and probably botch the whole thing. Sure enough, the case that should have been resolved within a month was dragged out by Xiao Lin for 3 long months. This provoked constant grumbling from the local officials and discontent among the people. The Wei River Dam, which should have been repaired, breached once more. Floodwaters swept away vast tracts of fertile farmland. Word spread that His Majesty had erupted in fury during court proceedings. He lambasted Shaolin as utterly incompetent. This grudge Shaolin took personally against Xiao Jinglan. Xiao Jinglan and I encountered him several times upon entering the palace. Shaolin's gaze seemed poised to devour Xiao Jinglan whole. He believed Xiao Jinglan had deliberately sabotaged him. Had he truly possessed the ability, the credit would have been his for the taking. After this incident, since the emperor only verbally reprimanded Shaolin without punishing him, rumors in the capital that Shaolin was the true crown prince grew increasingly rampant. Zhao Yinxuo, relying on Shaolin's influence, was even invited to the flower selection gathering for noble ladies in the capital. She looked down on those rare and precious varieties of flowers. Instead, she favored the peonies in full bloom, plucking several to adorn her hair. Were the imperial consort's position not vacant, such an act would have cost her head countless times over. She deliberately stepped on my skirt hem and stumbled to the ground. While muttering apologies, she shot me a venomous glare. When no one was watching, she revealed mottled red marks beneath her collar to me. Once Brother Rui becomes crown prince, I shall be his crown princess. What does it matter that His Majesty favors you? Brother Rui loves only me, I sneered. Then this palace wishes Miss Zhao her wish fulfilled soon. Zhao Yinxuo hadn't expected such a reply and stood frozen in place. It felt like punching air. After the new year, envoys from a neighboring kingdom delivered a letter. They would soon send their most favored third prince to pay homage, to showcase the grandeur of our great nation. Preparations for the banquet alone took several days. Ever since Shaolin suffered an allergic reaction to the pine nut and lily pastry last time, the head steward of the imperial kitchen was severely punished. The palace kitchen still did not include this pastry on its menu. Yet upon arriving in the capital, the third prince of the neighboring kingdom wandered through the city. He accidentally sampled the pine nut and lily pastry from Yipingxian and was utterly enchanted. He enthusiastically packed many portions, inviting everyone to taste them. Shaolin declined repeatedly, explaining his allergy to the pastry. To everyone's surprise, the third prince's expression darkened. He insisted that Shaolin's refusal was a slight to him personally and to his father, the emperor. Seeing a piece of pine nut and lily cake elevated to such significance, the emperor shot Shaolin a displeased glance. Shaolin steeled himself, swallowed the pastry, and forced a smile, praising its exquisite flavor. Yet, after a long while, no red rash appeared on his body. The third prince adopted a carefree demeanor. Well, that's good then. Where's the allergy? You weren't deliberately deceiving this prince, were you? Everyone immediately looked at Shaolin with varied expressions, and the emperor's face slowly darkened. The atmosphere grew awkward. To prove himself, Shaolin snatched the pastry tray and began stuffing pieces into his mouth. But no matter how many he ate, no allergic reaction appeared. Refusing to believe it, he devoured another piece only to nearly choke on it due to his haste. His flushed face and strained neck made for an embarrassing spectacle. Witnessing this, the crowd exchanged knowing glances. The emperor on the dais darkened his expression. After a piercing glance at Shaolin, the emperor suppressed his anger and said, "Perhaps Minister Shin misremembered. The previous allergic reaction was not caused by this particular pastry. Minister Shin, should you not apologize to the third prince?" Shaolin's legs trembled violently. Without a moment's hesitation, he knelt down. He frantically kowtowed, offering his apologies to the third prince. The third prince, holding his wine cup, leaned back. Enough. Enough. It's as if this prince were bullying someone. His gaze inadvertently met Xiao Jinglin's, and a knowing smile touched his lips. The banquet held to welcome the envoy from the neighboring country had turned into a farce. The third prince used the excuse of being unable to hold his liquor and returned to the official guest house early. The palace gates closed, and the emperor immediately summoned his secret guards to investigate Shaolin. Soon, The guards uncovered records showing Shaolin had visited an apothecary outside the palace to purchase medicine. The emperor's face darkened. What medicine was purchased? The guards respectfully presented the prescription. The imperial physician examined it closely and stated bluntly, "This formula is not life-threatening, but it will cause the patient to break out in a rash over their entire body." Enraged, the emperor seized the teacup beside him and hurled it at Shaolin's head. Blood streamed from Shaolin's temple, yet he dared not raise a hand to wipe it away. His face drained of color as he protested loudly, "That wasn't me. I never went there." The emperor then slammed the portrait brought by the secret guard onto his face. "Look at yourself. Who else could this be but you? The palace gate guards confirmed you left the palace that day. Where did you go?" It truly wasn't him, it was Xiao Jinglan disguised. He deliberately chose the day Shaolin left the palace. Disguised as him, he went to the herbalist and obtained a medicine that causes a body-wide rash. He then secretly laced it into the pine nut and lily pastry that day. After consuming it, Shaolin would break out in a rash all over his body, appearing as if he had an allergic reaction from accidentally eating the pine nut and lily pastry. As for where Shaolin went, he wouldn't say and dared not say. If the emperor found out he had left the palace that day to frequent the brothels and consort with prostitutes, and had accepted 10,000 taels of gold from the son of the Minister of Rights to handle his unspeakable affairs, his crimes would extend far beyond this single offense. Shaolin still sought to exonerate himself. Little did he know that the more he spoke, the deeper the emperor's suspicion grew. The emperor propped his forehead, massaging the pressure point at his temple, then waved for him to be led away. Not sending him straight to the dungeon was already showing leniency. Shaolin could never figure it out. Why did his allergic reaction to the pine nut and lily pastry come and go? He was certain he hadn't purchased medicine from the apothecary. Yet records of such purchases surfaced. Even that pine nut and lily pastry. It was explicitly forbidden within the palace. Yet it kept appearing, time and again, when he finally realized had been set up. Fury consumed him. He smashed 7 or 8 exquisite porcelain vases in the hall. A trembling palace attendant cautiously reminded him that every ornament was accounted for in the ledgers. His furious kick sent the man flying 3 or 4 meters away. Zhao Yanshua remained oblivious to the commo. Tie-in. She approached Shaolin with a cheerful smile. "Brother Rue, when exactly does His Majesty plan to name you Crown Prince?" This question struck Shaolin's sore spot with pinpoint accuracy. His eyes read. He grabbed Zhao Yanshu by the throat and flung her onto the bed. The sound of silk satin being torn to shreds mingled with her intermittent cries of pain and pleas for mercy. Soon, it transformed into the woman's wretched, heart-wrenching wails. The palace maid on duty outside the hall seemed oblivious to the commotion. They busied themselves sweeping fallen leaves beneath the eaves. Shaolin had lost the emperor's favor over the pine nut and lily pastry incident. The emperor had begun favoring Xiao Jinglan once more. Finally, on a day off, Xiao Jinglan brought me to the palace to pay respects to the emperor. We stayed until after the emperor's midday meal before departing. Hand in hand, we strolled along the paths of the imperial garden. The palace attendants tending the flowers couldn't help but marvel. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is truly extraordinary in his handsomeness. And the Crown Princess is like a celestial being. Indeed. No wonder His Majesty says the Crown Princess is the paragon of the imperial ladies. Shaolin, passing by, overheard these words. His face darkening, gritting his teeth, he bowed to me and Xiao Jinglan. I smiled and greeted him. "Minister Shin, you're of marriageable age. Have you found a lady of interest?" He seemed taken aback by my words. Shaolin looked at me with a complex expression, replying after a long pause. "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I have no immediate plans to marry." I feigned surprise. "Then what about Miss Zhao?" "Miss Zhao is merely my cousin." I feigned sudden understanding and offered gentle advice. Marriage could be quite advantageous for Minister Shin. A prominent maternal family could. Seeing his eyes flicker, I knew he was swayed. With a smile, I turned and departed with Xiao Jinglan. Zhao Yanshua would surely throw another fit now. That very evening, the Chancellor's residence received Shaolin's calling card. After several refusals, the Chancellor finally agreed to meet him at the residence. To everyone's surprise, Shaolin laid bare his ambition, openly declaring his desire to marry the Chancellor's daughter and even promising her the position of crown princess. The Chancellor feigned ignorance, offering vague evasions before immediately reporting the matter to the Emperor. Having seized power in his youth, the Emperor detested factionalism and self-serving alliances above all. During court, he publicly denounced Shaolin's wolfish ambitions before all ministers. He demoted Shaolin's rank, warning him to mend his ways. Upon learning this, Zhao Yanshua dragged Shaolin into a tantrum. When we were together, you promised to save the crown princess position for me. Now you dare seek another noble lattice hand. Has Brother Rui forgotten the vow he made to Shuer? Shaolin, already under the Emperor's suspicion, saw his long-suppressed emotions erupt completely. He struck Zhao Yanshua hard across the face. The force sent Zhao Yanshua tumbling to the floor. Dazed, she touched the red handprint on her cheek. Her mind blank, Shaolin felt a twinge of guilt as he watched her sitting there. She could no longer aid his rise, and her once lovely features were fading day by day. His frustration grew with each thought, and he swept his sleeves aside. Leaving, it was said that Zhao Yanshua's wails echoed throughout the entire palace that day. In his previous life, Shaolin had appeared to love Zhao Yanshua so deeply. Now, stripped of his crown prince status, their childhood sweethearts had turned into bitter enemies. It was nothing more than this. As the palace attendant by Shaolin's side recounted these events to me in detail, I was pruning a newly bloomed peony. The sharp shears snapped with a crisp snip, severing the stem and leaves along with the blooming flower. They fell neatly at my feet. Shaolin remained quiet for a while, daring not to provoke the Emperor's wrath again. Xiao Jinglan and I both sensed he wouldn't give up so easily. After all, it was the position of Crown Prince second only to the Emperor himself. Once the Emperor passed away, he would ascend the throne, ruling over vast lands. After vanishing for several days, Shaolin suddenly appeared at the imperial study carrying a scroll. He timidly addressed the Emperor. Your Majesty, I have something to report. Speak. The Emperor replied impatiently. Shaolin promptly presented everything he held. Your servant accidentally found the senior palace maid who once served the late Empress. She revealed that it was she who personally carried me away from the late Empress' side and out of the palace. Your Majesty, Luke, do you recall this palace maid's appearance? After hearing Shaolin's words, the Emperor unrolled the scroll, his expression shifting several times. He summoned his secret guard. Investigate immediately. Is this true? Shaolin stood before the Emperor and added softly. She also said it was she who placed me at that peasant family's doorstep. And she slipped the jade token into my swaddling clothes. The veins bulged on the Emperor's hand as he gripped the scroll. After a long moment, he gave a faint nod and dismissed Shaolin. Bring Xiao Jinglan to see me. With a loud clang, the gates of the Eastern Palace were forced open. The commander of the Imperial Guards, his face icy, extended his hand toward Xiao Jinglan and said stiffly, His Majesty requests the Crown Prince to enter the palace. My heart jolted, and I sensed something major had happened in the palace. This display seemed to indicate the Emperor had already sentenced Xiao Jinglan to death. The scene from my previous life replayed before my eyes, Xiao Jinglan being seized by the Imperial Guards. This time, I would not let him face it alone. Ignoring the guard's obstruction, I insisted on accompanying him. Inside the palace, a woman with a mature woman's bun knelt on the ground. The Emperor instructed Shaolin to identify her. Is this the senior palace maid who served by the late Empress' side? Shaolin glanced at her and immediately nodded. Indeed, she was the one who carried me out of the palace all those years ago. The Emperor looked at the woman, seemingly lost in recollection. I remember your face. You accompanied the late Empress into the palace. Did she order you to swap the child out of the palace after giving birth to the Crown Prince? The woman lifted her head slightly, glancing at Shaolin before stealing a quick look at me and Xiao Jinglan. She bowed her head again, kowtowing as she replied. The late empress indeed ordered this servant to swap the newborn crown prince with an abandoned infant from outside the palace. At these words, the emperor's gaze toward Xiao Jinglan grew icy cold, his face flushing with rage. I quietly pulled up my sleeve, revealing a delicate, petite gold locket. Just as the emperor was about to punish Xiao Jinglan, the woman kowtowed 3 more times. This servant deeply understands that the imperial bloodline must not be tainted. Therefore, I did not exchange the crown prince. All present were stunned. The emperor's face turned ashen as he demanded, "How can you prove your words are true?" This servant remembers the crown prince has a plum blossom birthmark on his chest. Your Majesty may verify it. Thus, before all eyes, Xiao Jinglan loosened his collar, revealing the plum blossom-shaped birthmark. Xiao Lin was utterly dumbfounded. He shouted that the woman was a fraud. "I am the crown prince. I am the crown prince. You and Xiao Jinglan are in cahoots. You're all in this together." But the woman was the one he had found. Now she was said to be Xiao Jinglan's agent, with deception piled upon deception. How could the emperor ever trust him again? At the emperor's command, Xiao Lin was imprisoned in the imperial jail reserved for death row inmates. Outside the palace, the moonlight was perfect. Yet Xiao Lin would never again have the chance to see the moonlight of this world. Xiao Jinglan took my hand as we walked out of the palace gates. I watched the mottled shadows of trees reflected on the palace walls and exhaled deeply. It's all over. Xiao Jinglan bent down, draping his wide cloak over me, and kissed my lips. These past days have been hard on you. Man. Men's words couldn't be trusted, spoke of hardship. Yet back in the Eastern Palace, he'd insist on doing even more exhausting things with me. Exhausted. I curled up in Xiao Jinglan's embrace, whimpering softly. These past days, Xiao Jinglan's secret guards, following my instructions, had kept a close watch on Xiao Lin's movements. They discovered he had found the senior palace maid who had served the late empress and had taken her entire family hostage to coerce her. Fortunately, I had my people rescue her family, using the golden lock as proof. Only then did she change her story, turning the tables on Xiao Lin. The next day, Yunxiang informed me someone awaited me at the back gate. I hurried out, robes draped over my shoulders, to find none other than the senior palace maid from the late empress service. She wore unassuming attire, clearly having evaded the emperor's spies to come here. I curtsied to her. "Thank you for your assistance yesterday, ma'am." Her expression remained serene, like a still ancient well. "Your Highness need not thank me. What I did was not for your sake. Even if you hadn't saved my family yesterday, I would have acted the same. Once I complete one final task, I shall join the Empress." With that, she departed. Xiao Lin is imprisoned, and Zhao Yanshu, as Yunxiang ground ink. I wrote the 3 characters Zhao Yanshu on paper. I sent men to seize Zhao Yanshu and bring her to the Eastern Palace. Her hair was disheveled, and a lingering slap mark still marred her face. Seeing me, she screamed wildly, "You bitch! I am the crown princess. I am." I stepped before her and murmured, "Your Rui brother is already imprisoned. As for you, you'll soon join him." Zhao Yanshuo's eyes widened in disbelief, their light fading rapidly. "I can give you a sum of money and send you away." I whispered this into her ear. She looked up at me, her expression uncertain. "Just tell His Majesty that Shinrui's jade token was found." Zhao Yanshuo pondered my words for a moment before gritting her teeth and asking, "You'll really send me away?" I nodded. She immediately grabbed my hand. "Take me to the palace. Take me to the palace. They'll go right now. If your Rui brother knew you'd betray him like this, he'd be utterly heartbroken." I chuckled softly, mocking their deep, ocean-like love. But Zhao Yanshu suddenly burst into laughter, gazing at me with a look of deep resentment. He was the one who forgot his promise first. He was the one who betrayed me first. He was the one who turned me into this half-human, half-ghost state. You didn't know, did you? I was carrying his child. But he didn't want it. He didn't want it. He said I was unworthy to bear his offspring. He forced me to drink the abortion potion. It hurt so much. I bled so much. Since that's the case, why should I spare his life? I quietly made arrangements within the palace. Zhao Yanshua stormed into the Golden Throne Hall, loudly proclaiming she had urgent matters to report to His Majesty. The Emperor, still seething with anger, initially refused to see her, but upon hearing it concerned Shaolin, he couldn't resist summoning her after all. The moment Zhao Yanshua saw the Emperor, she immediately knelt. She vividly recounted how Shaolin had found the jade token, how the Emperor's men had brought him back to the palace, and how, upon learning he might be the crown prince, had hatched a wicked plan. Had discovered from palace servants that the late empress had been allergic to pine nut and lily pastries. So had bought the medicine himself to fake his own allergy to them. She spilled it all out like beans from a bamboo tube. I never imagined Zhao Yanshu could be so ruthless. Her talent for fabricating lies was truly first-rate. Seeing this woman, who had grown up alongside Shaolin, confirm every detail, the emperor finally realized Shaolin was nothing but a fraud. Ambitious yet utterly foolish. He had manipulated an emperor like a puppet. Enraged, the emperor coughed up blood. Attendants scrambled to summon physicians to treat the emperor. Zhao Yanshua seized the chaos to flee the palace. She demanded silver from me. Intending to depart, I smiled and ordered the secret guards to escort her to the courtyard where I had once been imprisoned in my past life. Gazing at her now haggard form, I told her, "You can go nowhere. You still have sins to atone for. Witch, poisonous harlot." Zhao Yanshua screamed curses at me. I ignored her, ordering the guards, "Cut out her tongue." Under her horrified gaze, first her tongue was severed, then her spine was broken. She lay on the ground, writhing and struggling, emitting agonized whimpers. Sticks struck Zhao Yanshua's body again and again. She writhed like rotten mud, her body soaked in blood. What I did to her was merely a return of what she had done to me in her past life. Once I had savored her expression of agony, I commanded, "Cast her into the brothel. Find some beggars to take care of her. Zhao Yanshu, taste the sins you committed in your previous life." Returning to the Eastern Palace, I leapt down from the carriage. Xiao Jinglin's figure came into view, was waiting for me. Sniffling, I walked up and embraced him, sliding my hand beneath his warm, thick cloak. "Xiao Jinglan, am growing more and more vicious. Man, past deeds bear present fruit. You're doing well." Xiao Jinglan swept me into his arms, striding steadily through the winding corridors. He declared, "Shaolin is a man of dark disposition, narrow-minded and petty, ruthless in his methods yet utterly lacking in wisdom. Should such a man become crown prince, chaos will surely engulf the realm. He lacks the virtue to hold such a position and will surely meet his downfall. He is unfit for this role, both for the nation and its people, even if he is crown prince. So what? I will kill him and take his place. You are vicious, but I am more vicious. The vicious Xiao Jinglan and the vicious Jiang Yuanshi. They truly are a perfect match." Shaolin languished in the imperial prison, his days filled with dread. I heard the guards gave him only 1 bowl of rice and half a bowl of water each day. When I saw him again, I nearly didn't recognize him. Once, he at least looked somewhat human. Now, skin and bones, what semblance of a man remains? Zhao Yanshu was well cared for in the brothel. I stuffed Zhao Yanshui, writhing like a maggot, into a sack and brought her before Shaolin. "Minister Shin, your beloved betrayed you. She informed His Majesty that you found the jade token and impersonated the crown prince. With both witness testimony and physical evidence, you have absolutely no chance of redemption." Shaolin's eyes bulged as he screamed her name, cursing her a beast and a whore. I untied the sack, spilling a pool of blood. Zhao Yanshua's blurred face emerged. "There. I know you hated her. Haven't I taken care of her for you?" Seeing Shaolin's blood drained from his face, I kindly informed him. Oh. And His Majesty has agreed to hand you over to me for punishment. Shaolin, eyes red, snarled. You venomous bitch. I am indeed a venomous bitch. So I grinned and shoved Xiao Yanshua toward him, saying, gouge out her eyes, and I'll let you go. He stared at the writhing Xiao Yanshua, his hand trembling as he touched her face. Forgive me, Schwerer. Struggling desperately, he clutched Xiao Yanshua tightly and thrust his fingers into her eye sockets. A wrenching wail erupted from her throat, echoing through the imperial prison. These two truly were a pair. Shaolin couldn't bear to look at the gouged-out eyeballs, flinging them behind him in haste before staring at me with pleading eyes. I kicked Xiao Yanshu, who remained motionless, dead. Yet not quite dead. I flashed Shaolin a sly smile. This poisonous woman was just tricking you. Of course. I knelt before His Majesty, sobbing until I could barely breathe. I confessed that Shaolin and Xiao Yanshua had caused me such heartache I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scene of Xiao Jinglan being dragged away by the imperial guards. His Majesty, filled with remorse, granted my request to sentence Shaolin to dismemberment. The day before the execution, I visited Shaolin one last time. He hadn't eaten for days, his mind already clouded by torment. I smiled at him and said, Minister Shin, did you know? You actually have another name, Shaolin. Xiao is the imperial surname, and Lin signifies grace and benevolence. At these words, Shaolin thrashed violently. Light flickered in his mist-filled eyes before fading back into darkness. His voice was hoarse and broken. He asked me, why did I see hatred in your eyes the first time we met? Jiang Yuansher, have we met before? I looked at him through the prison bars. No. Then why treat me this way? Whether Xiao Jinglan or I becomes crown prince, you'd be crown princess. Because you're not as handsome as Xiao Jinglan. Your face is rather repulsive. With that, I turned and walked away without looking back. I left Shaolin screaming and shouting in his cell. I simply covered my ears in silence. On the day Shaolin was executed, heavy snow blanketed the capital. Xiao Jinglan and I stood at the second-floor window of Yipingxian, overlooking the marketplace. We watched the executioner's blade rise and fall, its motion mirroring the snowflakes drifting down. After about half an hour, the snow grew heavier. The swirling goose feathers seemed intent on burying all past sins. A new fox fur collar wrapped around my neck. I rubbed my hands together and exhaled a breath of warmth. Turning my head, my gaze fell upon Xiao Jinglan's jade-like profile. It's freezing. Let's go back. Yinxiang has roasted sweet potatoes waiting for us. Xiao Jinglan took my hand and we left Yipingxian. When the waiter came to clear the table, he picked up the silver left behind, muttering under his breath. Strange. There were definitely two people standing here just now. When did they leave? After spring arrived. His Majesty's health deteriorated steadily. He required a constant supply of medicinal soups to sustain him each day. He finally learned of the late Empress' deep-seated hatred for him, so he compensated Xiao Jinglan double for all had lost. He even granted titles to my father and brother. He summoned Xiao Jinglan and me, clasping Xiao Jinglan's hand. He said the wisest decision had ever made was choosing me as crown prince consort for Xiao Jinglan. Another half-year passed, and the emperor's illness grew severe. Xiao Jinglan was entrusted with the regency. He personally oversaw every matter, great and small, within the court. On the day the emperor passed away, Xiao Jinglan and I kept vigil at his bedside. Zhou Nanny, whom we hadn't seen in ages, also arrived. The emperor saw her and was reminded of the late empress. He murmured, Qinghe, Qinghe, I've come to find you. Nanny Zhou spoke coldly. Your Majesty, the Empress is already dead. Do you still wish to disturb her peace below? The Emperor, already emaciated, widened his eyes at her words. What do you mean by this? Nanny Zhou looked at the Emperor, her eyes filled with icy glare. Your Majesty is unaware, I suppose, But you killed your own son with your own hands. Shinrue is the true crown prince. You murdered General He, forcibly took his wife, and forced Her Majesty into pregnancy. A man like you deserves hell. Her Majesty's remains are no longer in the imperial tomb. This servant buried her alongside General He. May your Majesty never meet Her Majesty again in the next life. The Emperor suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. You all. Qinghe is mine. Qinghe is my wife for all eternity. Autumn of the 14th year of Qingyuan. Emperor Zhaoyuan passed away. After Xiao Jinglan ascended the throne, he made me empress. Together we ascended the city tower. His arm encircled my shoulders as he leaned close, whispering softly, "You and I, year after year, shall watch the sun and moon endure. Rivers and mountains remain steadfast." The following year, the emperor reformed the state system, ruling jointly with the empress. The story concludes. Thank you for watching. The next chapter promises even greater excitement.